In the spring of 1944, Europe stood on the edge of a moment that would change history forever. The Allied forces were preparing for an invasion on a scale the world had never seen. Soldiers from America, Britain, Canada, and across the free world gathered in camps across southern England. They knew that soon they would be crossing the English Channel to face Hitler's formidable defenses in northern France. The operation was called Overlord, and its first day would become immortalized as D-Day. But before the beaches of Normandy echoed with gunfire and thunder, before tanks rolled ashore and planes filled the skies, there were quieter moments. Moments when young men sat by dim light with pen and paper, writing letters that might be their last. Letters to wives, mothers, fathers, children, and sweethearts, letters filled with love, fear, hope, and sometimes resignation. For the soldiers, writing these letters was both a comfort and a release. It allowed them to put into words what weighed most heavily on their hearts, knowing that in just hours, their lives might be forever changed or ended. The last letters before D-Day stand today as haunting testaments to the courage and humanity of those who faced the storm. Life in the camps of southern England was tense in the weeks before the invasion. The secrecy of the mission meant soldiers were cut off from the outside world. Security was tight, with units confined to their staging areas. The men passed time playing cards, talking quietly, or cleaning their gear again and again. Some joked to hide their fear, others sat in silence. Almost all, at one point or another, took out a sheet of paper to write. One American soldier, stationed with the 1st Infantry Division, began his letter with a sense of reassurance to his family back home. He wrote that everything was fine, that he was well and ready. But between the lines, there was the unspoken knowledge that tomorrow might bring the hardest fight of his life. He thanked his parents for raising him strong and told them not to worry if they didn't hear from him for a while. From a British paratrooper came words to his young wife. He reminded her of their wedding just a year before and wrote how he wished he could be with her now. He spoke of his love and said that whatever happened, she should know she had made him the happiest man in the world. He asked her to kiss their newborn child for him, a baby he had barely seen before being deployed. Letters from Canadian troops often carried the same mixture of humor and tenderness. One Canadian private wrote jokingly about the English food, saying he longed for the bread and butter back home. But his tone shifted as he spoke of his parents and siblings, writing that he hoped he would be able to see them again, though he was ready to do his duty if not. For many soldiers, faith was a central theme in their final words. One man wrote to his mother that he felt calm, because he believed God would decide his fate and that gave him peace. Another told his wife that whatever happened, he hoped she would find strength in prayer and continue living her life with courage. The act of writing was often as important as the words themselves. Soldiers knew their letters might not reach their families unless they fell in battle, in which case they would be delivered later. That gave the words an added weight, as though every sentence carried the possibility of being a final farewell. The hours passed, and the night before the invasion grew quiet in the camps. The sound of pens scratching on paper, mixed with the distant rumble of engines and the occasional murmur of voices, created an atmosphere of both anticipation and dread. Some soldiers folded their letters neatly and placed them in their kit, others handed them to chaplains or officers to ensure they would be sent. The morning of June 6, 1944, dawned gray and uncertain. As soldiers boarded landing craft and transport planes, many clutched the memory of the words they had written the night before. Some carried letters in their breast pockets, close to their hearts, as a final link to home. When the invasion began, the beaches of Normandy turned into scenes of unimaginable chaos. Gunfire cracked across the shoreline, artillery thundered, and men fell by the thousands. For many who had written their last letters, those words would soon be delivered to grieving families across the ocean. One American mother received a letter from her son weeks after his death on Omaha Beach. In it, he had written that if anything happened to him, she should be proud and remember that he had done his duty. He asked her to tell his younger siblings to study hard, stay honest, and live full lives. For her, those words became both a comfort and a wound that never truly healed. A young British widow opened her husband's final letter and read of his love for her and their child. He had written that he would be thinking of them every moment, and if he did not return, he wanted his son to grow up knowing his father had loved him deeply. Those words became a family treasure, passed down through generations. Canadian families also held tightly to the letters that arrived after their losses. One mother read her son's final message, in which he had written that he was proud to fight alongside his comrades and that he hoped Canada would hold its head high when the war was done. These letters reveal the humanity behind the statistics of war. The Normandy invasion involved more than 156,000 Allied troops on the first day alone, with thousands killed or wounded. Behind every number was a life, a family, and words that still speak to us across the decades. What makes these letters so powerful is not just their historical context, but the emotions they carry. Fear and bravery walked hand in hand. Soldiers often admitted their fear, but alongside it came determination, loyalty to comrades, and love for those waiting back home. In their final words, they showed that even in the face of death, human connections remained the strongest force. As the war went on, some of the soldiers who survived kept copies of the letters they had written, sharing them later in memoirs or with their families. For those who never returned, the letters became legacies, fragments of voices silenced too soon. Today, reading these words brings us closer to understanding the true cost of D-Day. The invasion is remembered as a military triumph, the turning point that began the liberation of Europe. But it was also a human tragedy, with thousands of young men never returning home. Their last letters remind us that behind every uniform was a son, a husband, a father, or a friend. The memory of D-Day is preserved not only in history books and memorials, but in these personal fragments of the past. Museums and archives have collected many of the letters, ensuring they are not lost to time. Visitors who read them often feel a profound connection, realizing that the words could have been written by any young man, in any war, across history. These soldiers, who faced the uncertainty of dawn on June 6, poured their hearts into words that still resonate today. Their letters reveal that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. They remind us that love and hope can endure even in the darkest hours. As we look back now, decades later, the last letters of soldiers before D-Day serve as windows into a moment when history turned on the courage of ordinary men. Men who carried pens and paper as well as rifles, who thought of their families even as they prepared to face enemy fire. Their words continue to echo across generations, a reminder that behind the battles and strategies of war are always the human stories that give them meaning. To read or hear these letters is to step closer to the hearts of those who made the ultimate sacrifice, and to honor them not only as soldiers, but as men who lived, loved, and hoped until their final breath. And so, as we remember D-Day, let us also remember the quiet voices on the night before. The pens scratching on paper, the words written in haste or in careful thought, the messages sealed away as the world held its breath. For in those letters lies the true spirit of sacrifice and the enduring bond between soldiers and the families they left behind. Those letters remain, even when the men themselves are gone, carrying forward their voices from that fateful night in June 1944, ensuring that their courage, their love, and their humanity will never be forgotten.